is lessons learned from the pandemic and architect's perspective. Anil, I now hand this session over to you and let's have a fun session.
Thank you, Nikhil. Welcome, friends. The entire session here, everybody is an architect and from different regions and different profiles. So we are now here to discuss what is it that we learned from the pandemic. We'll be talking about this as a theme, ongoing theme when we discuss those 2 years. I think we have taught us a lot. So our idea is to now understand that going forward, it's not to look at the past, but going forward, architectural design-wise, in the hotel industry, where do we stand and what are the steps that one needs to take, how to do upon it, how to work on it, or is it just going to be the same? I mean, it will not affect our design philosophy or design thinking or our detailing in any which way. So I immediately first start with style. The style is the head of the brand, and the brands have suffered the most. The owners actually suffered, lost a lot of money, a lot of business hotels. Some of the resort hotels did well, but going forward, what do you see would be the line or the belief of an architect if you are looking for a new project or designing a greenfield project, how you want to take it forward?
So, thank you, Mr. Sharma. I think last 2 years have been extremely difficult for us, but every dark cloud has got a silver lining, and I would like to believe that we are coming out of this. My brief to any architect or anybody who comes to us for a project is that we always have to keep our owners in the center stage. We have to understand what the owner's aspirations are. We have to keep the guest expectations in mind. And what has been the key learning in last 2 years is that more and more owners are now getting conscious, and this whole aspiration of building plus is being rethought of by owners and all people within all the stakeholders. And we need to be more efficient, we need to be more disciplined, and we need to cut down on anything that's over and above or is unnecessary. So in last 2 years, or especially during the first or the second wave, there was this lockdown and everybody was crying and everybody was really bleeding, and we saw just a lot of difficulties. People have learned. I would like to believe that we all have learned as an industry, and we ought to take the right decisions. We need to take the right step forwards, and we need to build more and more efficient hotels. It's good to have a certain thing, but is it really important to have a particular thing? So we need to be focusing on technology. We need to be more flexible in terms of having spaces being designed as multifunctional spaces. We need to ensure that we adapt technology in the right manner, and we also need to be ensuring on wellness. As a hotel, as an industry, I'd like to believe that we have never been very, very technology focused. We've been lazy with adopting new technology trends, but COVID has really forced us to get out of our comfort zones and adopt technology in a big manner. So that's the message to everybody, whether it is these are the designers or anyone else, that we need to be very, very efficient.
All right. What Mr. Sahib Khan is saying, that the hotels are really lean and mean and ecological. I would now ask Liza, what are the lessons that we learned in terms of hotel industry from the pandemic, and where do we see we going?
Thank you, Anil, for inviting us. So, we, as Sayan mentioned, we did see a lot of changes that took place, and I think they're going to be staying here. The main thing that what we learned was technology, because the owners were not ready for technology, although it was there. But the pandemic taught them that you need to change, you need to adapt technology. You have to make it a part of your design, because we saw that touch was the main thing, and so everybody started with the touchless work, and it's here to stay. So henceforth, like I think we should be adapting to a lot of the technology, maybe even robo to give you room service and various other things that technology could help us, and we would do away with the human touch.
All right, so touchless. So saying that again, technology, same thing what Science said. Touchless is one of the technology that you would like to do. That's kind of part of the real spaces facility. What is your doing here? So you've been practicing very vulnerable, not vulnerable, vernacular architecture, and you are into the hills. So first time we have somebody honored, really it's an honor to have you here. He has been working in the hills and is doing wonderful job there. So what's your experience? Were you affected? And of course, you must have been affected.
Yes, thank you very much. I've been practicing for 40 years now, long time. And what's happened is, first of all, before I go into the client perspective, for me, what happened is, initially when we were doing architecture practice, we were drawing on E-squares, red squares, working men. And then over the years, as you mature and as you become bigger, you start doing things, everything remote control. So, we were reaching a stage where, the draftsmen are doing the drafting, the junior architects are doing the designing, the community planners are doing the planning. So, after some time you lose the focus and the detailing, because you've reached a level where your juniors are doing detailing. And when the pandemic happened, it was a real big shock for me, because my Dubai office, I lost work. He died, one had a heart attack. I lost 2 architects in here, also COVID. I was handling about 180 projects.
Wow.
And I lost a client, their project, Kathmandu, and I want to die. I was doing another very big project, but the owner died. So I had a very traumatic experience. I lost my staff, I lost client. It was a big shock. And at the same time, when the pandemic happened, then obviously many of my staff had to go home. And when that happened, with so many projects, and it was like losing an arm, losing a leg, and you're left high and dry. And then I realized that work still has to continue. And then, we found out that we got to get back to basics. And that's when we realized that, when you go back to basics, when you're doing your own designing, your own detailing, when you're dealing with the client, interacting with them in detail, then you realize that basically at some level, at some point, maybe you're going to. And that's when, now that people are talking about efficiency, utility of the spaces, we started realizing that yes, when you're back to basics, when you're back to the drawing board, that's when you really find out what efficiency means. People talk about efficiency. So efficiency means, is it lowering standards? Is it minimizing spaces? Is it using cheaper materials? Using cheaper technology? Is it infringing on safety standards? So I think a combination of all this will actually give you efficiency. And efficiency, technology means the efficiency of power means maybe now from incandescent lighting, you're coming down to neon lighting, now you're coming to LED lighting. Yes, so your power consumption is coming down, and that's a form of efficiency. And when it comes to water management, maybe you're doing water harvesting, doing recycling, you're managing your waste. That's another form of efficiency. And also when you're doing landscaping, probably choosing the right elements, the right material. Like in the hills, we've noticed that everyone likes to do a lot of landscaping, and we buy a lot of palm trees and areca palm, and a lot of greenery and a lot of flowers. And then you find out after one season it's all dried up, it's all withered out, it's all dead. So you're keeping on replacing the landscaping, buying potted plants, and then we found out that that's a waste of money. That's not really the right landscaping element. So what I did is I went all the way to Wilshire Garden in London, and since I'm designing mostly in the hills and the tropical climates, thicken, northeast, tall, high altitude, and also working in Dubai at the same time in the desert climate, we found out that many of the plants that we use for landscaping, in UK, is very much the kind of landscaping that we got to utilize in the hills. Because in Europe, most of the landscaping is alpine materials. So we got to use alpine materials to landscape in the hills. But at the same time, in the desert climate, we found out that yes, you have to do the palm, but then you have to do the kind of plants, and you cannot do orchids, and you cannot do things like that. And as a result, I think in the pandemic we learned that without maintenance or any project, we are blindly doing landscaping, blindly doing drying, making a room with maybe about 20 different lights and rope lighting, reflective ceiling lighting, and focus lighting. And then we found out that many of these things are not really necessary. So I think one way is to minimize, and the other is that I think the kind of design that we should go forward to is the minimalist design. And we also find out that when we are thinking in terms of costing, there are things which are not necessary that we don't use. And in the pandemic, when it came down to building construction, we also found out that we're not getting people to do construction. There are no people to run away, and then we have to minimize the labor inputs. And then at the same time, we found out that also lowers the cost. Yes, with less number of people, same product, and at the same time maintain quality. And I found out that now we are recovering, but our design lifestyle has completely changed. The design approach has changed. But at the same time, there was a talk of people now changing into resorts. So especially when I was designing hotels. Hotels we are trying to centralize. All the back of the house areas, all the public areas, all the guest areas. But in the resort design, at least in my experience, I found out it's exactly opposite of designing a hotel. It's decentralization. People want cottages, people want to be away. You've got to think of satellite kitchens. You cannot think of a centralized kitchen. You've got to think of extra services, and you cannot really have the kind of efficient operations that you would expect in a hotel. So I think we have to adapt. Like the pandemic has taught us how to adapt. So I think instead of copying, instead of just doing copy-paste architecture, we found out that now, according to the area that we're working on, especially now that I'm back in India, and I think in the Indian context, it's very important for us to adapt and to adopt. We tend to adopt, and that's I think where our basic problem is. So I think adaptation is something which we have learned, and also more efficient way of working. Like now instead of having about 20 architects and 10 engineers, we're finding we can do the same thing with half the number of people. So and still maintain the same quality. I think the pandemic has had its positive effects, apart from the very traumatic experiences that we had.
Right. What I understand from you is that saying that efficiency of design, like everybody else is saying, that has to be mean what I said earlier. You also said minimalist design, and you also said that the resorts are spread out in the city hotels are kind of centralized and very sick, so one has to kind of learn from that too. You bring in efficiency and you talked about your staff. You were able to work with much lesser staff, with the same amount of efficiency. The staff efficiency is also increased. All right, I will now move the question to Kushal Bhai. You've been practicing for a long time. So my mood question is that for an architect, architectural design wise, what are the lessons that have been learned from COVID and where are we moving forward? Moving forward, where do we see ourselves as an architect?
Thank you, Anand. So I think it was interesting that Praveen brought up this issue of going back to basics. And to me, this period of pandemic has allowed me to really focus a lot on the work and look at unconventional or different design solutions to cater to the current environmental situation. So the thing is that I view architecture as a holistic conglomerate of all the designers coming together, whether it's MEP or structure. So more so in the current situation, I see that in terms of space planning, where we need to be efficient so that we prevent unwanted interaction. In terms of ventilation planning, or whether it is adaptive use of spaces. So the pandemic has kind of taught us that the space suddenly changes its context at various times to cater to situations. So the planning of the MEP becomes important, the planning of the structure becomes important in the sense that you need to adapt the space to a given situation. So, I was listening to the use of technology. As regards technology, it's good that we have technology to help us look at various tangible issues. I'm a bit wary about technology, including into the guest experience. That's my personal take. Because to me, a guest experience, it takes back memories and improves that. And if it becomes very impersonal, to me, it doesn't serve the purpose. So we need to find the right balance between technology and the whole guest experience for somebody who's creating a memorable stay in a hotel or a resort. So I would say that we are looking at different solutions for space planning. We are really, so to me, two keywords come about. One is sensitivity and one is reimagination.
Okay. So you're saying that what you use spaces, you're saying that lesser technology because the interface is bad. Like yesterday I was trying to switch off the light, but I couldn't. I just went to the master and then everything went off.
I agree.
So technology has both advantages and disadvantages. So that's your take, and of course reimagining spaces. And now I will move to my friend Amit. You've been working with Zahari and most of the styles and kind of inspired from other work in that side. In terms of what has done for you. So, do you think there's anything that changes in the design process and everything because of the pandemic, or is it just the same? And what are the moving forward?
Well, I think the important thing is that we're looking at guest experience.
Because guest experience is central to any design, hospitality or whichever. And the guest mindset has changed a bit during that because a lot of them were stuck inside the house. It was this feeling of claustrophobia, and this is why I think these resorts will be much better than city. People know go out in the nature and be a bit more awesome. I think one thing which is, and then the other issue is the economics of making a hotel. The plot sizes are becoming smaller. Like you mentioned that resort style architecture can be really interesting, but let's say hotel plots are half acre, 1 acre. This is how much we should make. It's very difficult to incorporate these centralized systems. I think one thing which we can look at, which hospitality wise in terms of the facility of balcony. Because you have to have spaces which are more open, which connect a bit more outside. Because this claustrophobia is something which people really suffer a lot. You know, just being imagined, being stuck inside the space for 2 years. This is the lashback, let's say, of the guests which we see in the design. But I think this has to come from the brands. As architects, I cannot just go on and, you know, because there's a lot of peripheral things which are connected. So in terms of design, not too much will change, I think, because hotel is a very lean machine, which we have to deliver the numbers. But a few changes in terms of more breakout spaces, more outdoor spaces, more focus on landscaping. I think this will happen a bit more. And the adaptability is very important. Like you mentioned, adaptability is something which we all get within COVID, be it running the office or designing or kind of architectural practicing. The adaptability of the mindset of architect, of hoteliers, owners, to the guest, which is the most important factor in the entire campaign. I think this is the thing which for me is very critical. So the room sizes will not change. But I think some more outdoor spaces would release this thing. And apart from COVID, one more issue which we have is any pollution is also there. They tie up together because filtration systems like HVAC systems we discussed here. We were wearing masks. Before COVID, we were also wearing masks because of PM 2.5. There are some things which will always stay like pollution. So if the HVAC systems have more reflection and you can have more clear inside space and also removing the bacteria. So I think it's a combination of HVAC system and technology. Plus maybe kind of merging the city hotels and getting a few things on the resort, which are like more open space. But of course very tricky with a lot of these problems, given the space which we plan.
Very good answer. I will get back to you with this, because I think that's the right answer that it was. What's your stay correct? You've seen industry grow from areas of there, so you've seen everything.
Absolutely. In fact, I've been listening with great interest for where speaking. And I couldn't agree with them more. And I think each one agrees more and each one agrees with the other. Basically the problem is the same with the approach. Now, what Ravi said about technology, adapting technology. We always adapt to technology. There is no doubt about that. But the technology is changing from time to time. The pace of technology, as you know, is so high. To keep up with that technology, you have to have a constant endeavor to think and create better. That is my philosophy. And from the humble key of the room door, that used to probably hang behind the reception desk, and how that changes the perception of people at reception, how a counter looks like a mask, then nothing on the counter. That's the background. And there are no keys hanging, there are no pigeonholes. You go straight and you just give your key to the door and you go. So I mean, it is the base of technology, it is the technology that has changed the face of time and vice versa. And of course, guest experience. Now, coming to what he said, I agree with him. Like, we always have been with adopting technology. We have always have been adopting technology. Adopt is the word actually. And now this thing has come up with the word from the blue. I mean, nobody imagined. But now we are already really imagining with the creativity. How to adapt the design to the start. I think the basic mantra would be taking from all that what you said, that the mantra should be adopt, adapt, and then improve. Because improvement is a constant endeavor. Also, you never know, someone's saying it's raining, gone, Amal is saying, like McKinsey is saying, it will go by 23, which all of us actually, without McKinsey had said it around 23, it will be over, but you never know how it comes up. We have to constantly keep that in mind and improve the research. Okay. Then there are two very distinct aspects in hotel when you talk about perspective of design. There's design from an architect point of view, designer and the interior. Now, in the interior point of view, from the interior, when you take, there are a lot of opportunities that you can get to subtle or to circumvent this problem. I mean, you can do your best, but then you never know where the guy who's serving, getting a tray in your room, where he's coming from. How much text you have, and you don't know how safe he is being himself. These are all things which are not followable at all. You can deal with the human being. But then you have to rely on it. I think the basic factor here is I didn't kind of just one that I heard, the guy was the last, but not the least. I should go a little more. So, now hotel, now he's a little, I couldn't agree more, very good. That me also did a lot of resort. This is much lower. The technologies are not so important. I mean, what do you want more? I mean, you need larger now. You need like that, basically. Now, even now, what we're doing, I mean, in all our hotels, in fact, the past 5 years, before the COVID, we had made all the standard practice. They'll be little 9 feet, windows 9 feet, door will be 9 feet, nothing less than that. Even for a 3-star hotel, 4-star hotel, we have because people have, cost problem. I said, no, you must get the guest experience. So it is not only the guest experience you have to plan for, you have to plan for the guest wellness and health. That is a very important aspect. And then after that, there are a lot of takeaways from there, and it goes on and on and on. And I think this is, as he said, I was about to say that actually, that, this, an architect or an interior designer cannot do alone. Everything is intertwined. Okay, so you have to get the MEP online when you're trying to solve a problem. I always call the MEP guy when you're saying, hey, can you do that? Now, if I want to do something, because hey, you can't do that because of intervention, all that. And the MEP guys will tell you how to pump it over here, how to exhaust at a higher rate the air through the rooms, and blah, 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 blah. There's smoking room, there's not smoking room. Because that's personal choice to say. And as he said, breakout spaces, we have as many corridors. Now we're talking about resorts and small hotels. Obviously, small hotel, you don't have high-level technical plan. Now we are working on a hotel in Mysore, 130-room hotel, which is about 37,000 square feet. But that's what my client has, and I have to do that. So what we did was there, we created an atrium. I mean, the atrium is an atrium. But see, a corridor is the greatest danger of when you crisscross, you know what I'm about. Now, we created the atrium is only 20 feet wide, only 20, just about this much. But then when you're standing in one row, 5 feet corridor, 12 feet, another 5 feet, you're about 18 feet away from anybody's crisscrossing. And the crisscrossing, obviously, comes down by 50%. So one must, I think, try to put it maybe small, but naturally you're seeing exhaust. And then you can, and then in a closed corridor, the main problem being if PFA, due to pressure. Now we give apologies to all the owners who are sitting there and the operators. Many operators don't switch on the TFA. GOP. TFA versus the GOP. Mostly, even the hottest summer I've seen in Madras. Now what happens is that heat gets into the elevator. And an elevator is the most dangerous thing where you can, in fact, what you must do actually is having a 10 pack or 12 packs elevator, you must have the car size for 16 packs. Not an elevator. You have to do that. These are permanent solutions because you never know what tomorrow will bring. You never know how things shape out. So you have to take that into consideration. And if you can just give a smaller atrium, then you solve a lot of problems. And then of course in the room, higher windows, better ventilation. And the design of windows. Now most hotels is not over 5 years. The side, we have better PFA, we have PFA and fresh air, no need to open window. I never agreed with that. How can you not air the room, for heaven's sake? classes. So after that, I said, take off all the red glasses, melamine, and then put some curtain and that. I mean, you must design the window. It has to be at least one portion. Has to be. And somebody is not well, he is not comfortable, and there I'm, breathing. You open the window and get a good position. That is another aspect. But to end up, I think it's a collective effort of the architect, the interior designer, and the MEP. Structure is fine, that we can end, but these people have to put their.
What I understand from you is that the corridors will be wider,
Yes.
but more bigger than
Yes.
what things.
Absolutely.
You're saying that higher ceilings, so the protocol height is higher.
And then I just started here.
Yeah.
Now, in Madras, we do hotel. Now, this is about 4 years ago. But the rule was in Chennai that not less than 2.4 meters, the corridor. I mean, by default, it's not that they had imagined anything like this. But when we used to say, why 2.4 meters? The hell do you want 2.54 meters? I give a 5 corridor. And then when you can just get into the room, you go another 2 feet effectively.
They have this number bylaws. We're bringing one
Can you believe it? Until now, they have reversed. They have reversed to now 6 feet. But now they have to go back to 2. Because the wider the corridor, the legislation has to correct. The legislation plays a part here.
That's one for corridors, higher protocol heights, larger elevator to maintain physical distancing. All that you're saying that.
Again, the legislation comes for hotel. People should, the corporation should say, okay, go another 10% height. Because I would love to have 11 feet clear room.
Right.
Nothing like an 11 clear. That's about almost 11 and a half feet below the floor.
Correct.
But it, not only aesthetically, but otherwise also.
And openable windows,
Absolutely.
right? So you're saying all that. And this is completely in contrast with what the rest of the panels we said that very lean and mean, very efficient.
No, lean and mean has different connotation.
But the moment you increase your footprint area, your slab area, goes up.
Also, the FSI goes from FSI.
FSI also goes up. So
That's why I said legislation has to intervene.
no, but that's something. Can't be really, it can be either what I was saying or what another guy is saying that you have to down increase coverage, but in other words, you will be saying that you might have to increase your per meters, per villages, which is a area. Of course, villages are apart, but there is available. You should build more, and you can cut down on your areas, other things, and you can bring in efficiency in many other ways, but you can still watch this. There is a little conflict there that I see in between what he is saying, what he is saying. Alright, before we go on to the next question, it is kind of will emerge from where we are. The best thing that I liked about it was that Louis said that there is a big difference between the resort living and the business hotel, city hotel. He is now trying to find a way to bring in that resort experience in the city hotel. Finally, it is difficult.
Just a little.
Just a little. Because guys were looking at, there were 6 different types of staying in those places, controlled places, every time, fully independent places, fully. The moment you give them back in, you give them a little plants, biofilling architecture, right? Or, let me put another word, one other word, which is urban resort. Is it possible to think of trying to give that experience to the urban? Will that be the way forward? That will right? Will it openable windows? Will it fans? Because right now what is happening is all over the world, people are trying to open up sustainability, using a 23-degree room temperature, 22.7 room temperature versus 26 degrees with the fan. Saving almost 33% of the past. So, is that to move forward, openable windows, yes, in certain weather time, because the WHO also said that everybody knows that increasing ventilation. There was a question also, and Mr. Rangan is worrying here that the guideline was to increase the ventilation of those places. Otherwise, virus will spread. So how do you improve the ventilation? The best is to be able to open the windows and run your fan. Right?
Also,
So isn't that going to be the way forward?
I would like to add is we got to get back to technology. So, like, if you want to increase the ventilation, I mean, there's quite a few problems that is there. When you open up things, it could be risk of somebody falling off. That's why the brands are saying no. We close. So you go back to technology and you increase, like when you go to a lot of these countries where during the day or there's a certain period when the heat or the ventilation or the quality of air goes bad in the room, it automatically opens up a blind and you get in fresh air and it is back into the, so your level of the oxygen level and everything improves. So you got to do that kind of improvements in the room. You can't be just opening up because, as you see, one thing is if you have balcony, there's a major problem, you got to maintain it every day. In Italy, there's all dust that sits in the balconies, bird droppings. When you just look outside this hotel, you've got all nets hanging over there. Does that, are we designing for the birds or are we designing for humans? And then maintenance for the hotel. So you got to consider all those things. You just can't be saying that, okay, you just open up the spaces. You got to look at those things.
Just my silence is my question. Okay, you answer that. What you're saying is, the question was that to create the urban, do we agree that we should be looking at creating more greener or kind of purpose? The city hotels should be kind of made little more greener, little more open, more spaces, or we really not agree with it. Now, I will again start with you answer that. So I will now start with Amit first. We'll take the second question now from that going forward now with the architect designing of that, what is the price will be ultimately because they have to run manage everything. They will be taking the lead. Suppose the price is really allowed, put a fan in the room, give me an open window, and also the balcony is the same way. Right? Would you be doing that, or what are the things that you would be looking at it from that perspective that happened in terms of guys? So, larger corridors, with the courtyard, in the lobby, with more greener thing, where suppose you have a size permitting, and you are able to do that. So, closer to nature, with architecture, just don't give the balcony, just give the plans, whatever. How do you make it? That's the kind of question now. Going forward, what kind of architecture? Is it something that we are going to continue what we are doing, or is it something that will be different than what it was?
I think first of all, hotel industry is a couple of lot of things. But everything is calculated with a perspective. So I think bigger corridors only have, I don't think bigger corridors will really make much difference with the quality of experience. Because I don't spend so much time. The only reason I was actually speaking about balconies is way of FSI. The only thing is maintenance perspective from the operator's point of view. Quality is not an issue because they just a little bit keep telling you don't make the rating 1.1, because you make it 1.6. If someone wants to jump from the hotel, you go and jump from the roof of the hotel. It's not a stop. So this is about safety and biophilia can also be improved. The costing of facade will not depends on the curtain glazing system. I have a semi-glazed system, which means my glass sets on floor to floor. So there's a lot of positives in this. And then technology is there, of course. Air changes can be, they can be higher refresh rates. But it's actually about experience. It's not just about technology. You go to in Gurgaon, I think they would be 50 lifestyle from every brand. You would choose a hotel not just based on what booking.com says, but also the experience which it brings. So the margin is not so much. So that's why actually I was only speaking about balconies because it's a machine of economics of hospitality industry. Where every square feet and every rupee counts. But I think this is one thing, and maybe some breakout spaces on certain floors can be there, consolidated areas. Where guests can go and really, just relax.
Okay. What about you, Ashok? What do you say?
So I don't think that the key word that I used earlier about reimagining, we need to reimagine the built and the ambient environment in an urban context and in a resort context. So possibly in a resort you could possibly open up windows where there is accessibility. And in an urban context where you have pollution, we need to look at technology to provide us a solution here, whether it's to get fresh air or to other means. I would possibly look at that.
Alright, okay. The balcony is the secure hotels, but the hotels are balconies, right? Good. What about you? It's not only about balcony, it's about other things. Let me come back to the building.
I'll give you a concrete examples.
Yeah.
I'll be also naming people resorts. I hope you don't mind. First of all, I think when we talk about technology, I think it should be appropriate. Or technology which is appropriate to the place. So, the hotel which I designed, we talked about hotel and resort. And sometimes, we see a big building and then it's all resort. So I think the terminology of the nomenclature is wrong. Hotel is hotel, and a resort is resort. So one of the first grants I had when I came back from America was Sterling Resort. And Sterling was one of the first night-sharing companies to become very successful initially. So they said, we would like to go a resort in Nigeria, which was my hometown. So they invited me to Uti. They said, we got 3 different types of cottages. We have a gaming cottage, which is like a bungalow. We got a studio. We got a deluxe cottage, which is 2 BHA. And then when I went to Uti, there was a big post-cottage block, a big building. And then I said, where's the resort? This is it. So they have 1 room, it's called the studio. 2 rooms, they said is a twin cottage. And 1 room, which is like a living room, dining room, and 2 rooms, which is like 2 rooms. It's like a 3 hotel room. They said, is a bungalow. So I said, yes, if you are asking me to design a resort in Darjeeling, it's not going to be like this. So then I said, I think we should get to see who are going to be the operators. You are serving with us fine, but who's going to operate? So then there was another colleague of mine, she was senior to me in Darjeeling, her name was Shukla Bose. She was the CEO of RCI, Results Quantum. So we told Shukla, I said, look, now they want a resort in Darjeeling, but we have to have some standards. And before all the big brands, everyone said today I'm glad. But those days, we were not very much there, in a big way. So RCI gave us a guideline. And they gave us a guideline with an agency. And I think that was one of the most educative things that I got. Yes, you want 50 cubic cottages, you want 20 1 BHK cottages, you want 50 studios, you have you have a menu saying that this is the configuration that you want. But at the same time, they gave us the entire BOH agency, right? From dining security, staff cleaning, all your kitchen supplies coming in and out, washing, staff orders, the works. And then I said, look, I'm designing a resort, I'm not designing this. And then I said, I'm an architect, I can design the front and the public spaces. And then I realized that I've got to get a service plan. And there was someone who did the service plan. We needed an MEP. Because without an MEP, we are it's like having a body without a skeleton. So we got an MEP expert. And his name was Mr. Gorega from Chennai. Expert, heritage, plumbing. And that's how we actually made the Sterling Resort one of the finest resorts in the country today. 110 cottages. In the center of 110 cottages. We have chalets, 2 BHK chalets. We have townhouses. We have a set studio unit. At the same time, we have a 30-room hotel block. We have a separate clubhouse. We have a jogging track. And it was a perfect solution. When we came to MEP, it's the same question. No, we are in Darjeeling. When the temperatures go down to zero, it doesn't exceed 20 degrees. So well, we need our fans. So it's not that we have to have fan. We need our fan. We didn't have air conditioning, but we needed heaters. So I think this is the kind of design that we have to start incorporating. That if you don't need a fan, you don't put a fan because you have to put a fan. And then after that, we matured more into hotel design. So when ITC came, Mr. Mohammed said, yes, ITC would like to come. And a friend of ours had a huge property in Sikkim. He wanted to go ahead and digital. But he wanted to make it very exclusive.
We are running out of time, so we need to please need to take the question to other people.
Yeah. So what we did is we did 26 rooms balconies. So coming to that, people were saying it's safety problem. When we did room with 26 balconies, we got a 5-star rating. Now we've added another 46 room balconies. Because now all the clients want balconies. We've given another set of 46 rooms, which is commissioned yesterday.
Okay. So, we talked about his experience of doing the project in Darjeeling, which is again the same thing what he said is about reservoir for City of Wells, balcony, is it totally in the mark? So, what's your take on that?
But I don't think balconies are appropriate in urban areas. That's it. Because we have solid problem. And even here, as he very rightly says, we go to our open the hotel, the pigeons sitting there, tapping all over. It's not possible. I know it's a wonderful breakout space. I mean, you just can go out, people want to smoke and smoke, and get a breath of fresh air. All that is there. But then it just doesn't work. And the second point, I declared. Then about the window, I think Amit got me a little wrong, that I don't mean all openable window. There has to be just one section of the window is open. Now that, it depends on what a collector, we are throwing ideas. What are the possibilities? Every possibility may not have to adapt. Now, but a window, and a window, actually a hotel window can be like this, it can also be like, a lot of pine hotels will be like this. Now, if it's like this or like that, you can take a bottom panel and just have a 15-degree reverse opening, so now no one falls out. All that you can do, creative thinking you can do.
So, openable windows are okay with you, balconies no. Suddenly, it will all be by what the plans want. So, my last question is, to heard everybody, what is your decision on that?
My take
Going
is
forward.
that you have to use common sense.
Yes.
98% of the things that we do in our daily lives is just common sense. There is no rocket science. And my simple question is that if we were to design a hotel in Srinagar and we were to design a hotel in Kerala or Goa, would our approach be the same? No, definitely not. You see, what you have to always understand is that what are the guest expectations? What is the environment that you're building your hotel in? What is it, a resort? Is it an urban setting? So all these are very pertinent questions, and you cannot be having one brushstroke kind of approach for all your problems. You have to be mindful of what you want to be doing, what you ought to be doing, and then have suitable solutions. So fans, definitely, a very unique way of controlling your costs, natural light, ventilation, always welcome. But you also have to understand is that suppose you were to build a 3-star hotel, which obviously has to be very efficient. Would you want to have higher ceilings? You have to be very mindful of all aspects. You cannot have one sort of approach. You have to kind of put yourself. You really have to apply yourself, and then kind of take an approach which is most logical.
Great. So finally, Rand says, logical, common sense, that's the way the plan would be, which always remain. So nothing more from any questions now.
Anyone with questions, Mr. Keswani? You already won a prize. I don't think I'm going to give you a prize.
Yeah, that's true. It's both a comment and then I'll relate the question. I think we're all looking at pandemic and therefore further with the pandemic. We all understand that similar events, not epidemic, will still happen. The world and investors are designing ESG standards why aren't we looking at those standards, because they will also answer this problem. That's number one. So instead of limiting it to the learning of the pandemic and therefore changes, I think if you will look at the broader stroke of ESG, a lot of this and other problems that we will face in the future will get addressed. I see a lot of activity by brands defining certain ESG standards, great marketing effort. But none of those work for, let's say, as Sahil said, a 3-star, 4-star small inventory hotel. So my question is, why don't you look at the larger piece of ESG and the answer to the pandemic and definition, design, saving, climate, whatever, will come together. And as a group of professionals, why not adapt, adopt, and find the answer on simplifying the 8-10 simple ESG standards that every individual owner who runs a 30, 40, 50 key hotel can actually adapt, and it can't be so expensive. If you were to solve the problem for the industry and it's expensive, you probably have solved the problem on how you want to look at the entire larger picture, because that would probably solve the issue. Tomorrow you'll have floods. It is going to happen. Climate change is going to happen. Pandemic is just one issue. But if you were to look at it in a holistic manner, I think a better answer would. That's just a comment.
All right, that's it.
Any more questions?
Good afternoon all. This is Bhavesh from Tourism Finance Corporation.
Sorry, you are?
Bhavesh from Tourism Finance Corporation.
Okay, Bhavesh.
So in the first panel discussion in which emerging themes on new project development were discussed, a point was made on the need for more revenue generating spaces or more efficient utilization of spaces. While in this panel discussion we are talking about it.
I understand. Will you please stand up and talk? I don't hear him. I understand. Microphone.
Sorry. So in the first panel discussion, a point was made on the need for more revenue generating spaces or hiring, more efficient utilization of space. While in this panel discussion we have talked about the need for more breakout spaces or more outdoor spaces. So are these two themes contrary to each other, or do they go together?
Who is that question directed to?
Sir,
Anyone?
Well, I would say that you got to look at the location, you got to look at the purpose of the design, and then you got to design. You can't be just drawing a straight line and saying that this is it, and you got to follow this. You have to look at the context of the location.
To answer your question, there is no formula which says that this is right or that is right or that is right. Every site is unique in itself, and every site will have an answer contained within that requirement of the site and the guest profile. So both will be right, but in different contexts.
Right. So like we are designing a hotel on the freeway, and the trucks passing by, everything. You can't have an openable window there. Yeah. So you cannot think of open
There's
spaces.
not more one needs to consider quality of air. If you add quality of if the area is too polluted, or of dust that's coming in, all kind of things have to be considered. But yes, options are available. People are now thinking of incorporating more greener spaces into the hotel wherever possible and wherever it is appropriate at time. There is no one formula. Any other question? Or
Yeah, I have a Rakesh Mathur. You have these green building certifications, and I'm not very conversant with the various criteria of these certifications, but I think there is a lot of let us say anomaly in the way things are certified. But my question is also, how accurate were these certifications? And secondly, because of the pandemic, is there going to be a new criteria set as far as these certifications?
I'll give this to Mr. We had this one of the guys I think you know about the architect. I'm going to ask to design that. Architect to design this. What is the we were asking?
Nimish Patel.
Nimish Patel.
Yeah.
Nimish Patel came and gave a fantastic presentation in one of the seminars last time, a couple of years ago, and he talked about all this IGBC or LEED certification sham that's happening in the country. I'll tell you, I was I was hired by IGBC as their main consultant to create these standards for hotel certification. So I went with two things. It's very interesting. I said that there was a time when I was about 80 kgs of weight. And I said, I'm only 2 chapatis. So this doctor, and I was losing weight. So this doctor said, no, you got to do this, you got to do this. And then suddenly I started having 15 chapatis. And then my weight was increasing. So they said, no, bring it up. So from 15, if I brought it down to 8, so this I will be certificate. Fantastic. While the need was only 2. I could try. But this is what IGBC does. They give you, allow you to go and eat more. Right? And from 20 if you bring it up to 10, while the actual requirement is only 2. So that's IGBC. And you just go tick mark, and you get your platinum rating. So the green building is only being driven by this industry. You put glass on the west facade of the building. You put a flint glass, you get 8 marks. Realizing, how can you put glass on the west facade because so much of sun coming in this part of the world and it is heating up, creating a greenhouse effect in the hotel. Your air conditioning need, which if there was no glass, solid wall, with insulated wall, so you could have done that and say 20 tons, you are doing it to 80 tons.
So, Anil, if I may ask, you use the word sham.
Yeah.
So, if it is a sham, the question is there a need for a certification? And if so, how can a genuine certification be initiated as we do environmental certifications and so on? And whether, of course, it will obviously incorporate, the pandemic impacts. But if there is a need, how can a genuine certification be established? And anybody can answer.
I'll answer that. Actually, we talk about efficiency. Right? Now, basically, green building or certification of a green building is making your services of the building efficient. So, you want to lower your power consumption, you want to recycle your wastewater, you want to manage your waste, solid and liquid waste. So basically it's making the services of your building more efficient in order to give you a rating on that. Now, how it is relevant especially is like, when I'm designing a 70-story building in Dubai, what happens is, every liter of water counts. And if I waste the water there, both in the project stage and in the operation stage, you can run into millions. So, I worked in Dubai for 13 years. Every building I design is a green building. So, green building has a rating. You have platinum, gold, silver. It's like 100%, 90%. It's like getting marks in an exam. So, basically, it's the level of efficiency you are trying to get in a building so that your cost comes down in terms of construction, in terms of project, in terms of. So, I think that is basically what they are trying to do. But then I think, people are not implementing it the way, and I think people are being sort of miscarried or misled to basically, giving us a.
So Anil, we do have our platinum sponsor in Nalco giving the best question. So,
Hi, good. There you go. Thank you. Nothing.